While exploring Utah's renowned tight Nutty Putty Cave, John Jones became stuck upside down in a dryer door-sized tunnel. Blood started to collect in his brain due to the angle at which he was trapped, guaranteeing his death if help wasn't found quickly. This is the account of the catastrophe at Nutty Putty Cave involving John Jones. With 7 siblings, John Edward Jones was born into a large family. Their father introduced John and his brother Josh to cave exploration and spelunking when they were young. They would go on caving excursions throughout their native Utah as kids, where they developed a fondness for exploring the dimly lit underground passageways. John had gotten married at the age of 26 and had a daughter who was 1 year old. They had moved to Virginia, where he was pursuing his pediatric cardiology degree at medical school, and his wife was expecting their second child. John returned home to spend Thanksgiving with his family that year, and they all agreed it would be fun to explore the well-known Nutty Putty Cave as a way to bond and celebrate the occasion. Around 8 in the evening on November 24, 2009, John and 10 other friends and family members managed to fit through Nutty Putty Cave's narrow entrance. Situated 55 miles, 88.5 kilometers south of Salt Lake City, Utah, Nutty Putty Cave was first discovered in 1960 by caver Dale Green. Nutty Putty Cave, so called because of the brown clay that resemble putty that covers its walls, was created by hydrothermal vents that carved their way through the limestone. Nutty Putty's various sections have names like the birth canal, aorta, maze, and scout eater that correspond to their respective sizes. According to surveys, Nutty Putty is 355 feet long and 145 feet deep underground. The history of Nutty Putty Cave has also been somewhat turbulent. The limestone rocks in the cave had been excessively smoothed over because of its popularity, and it was thought that a fatality would happen in one of those sections. After entering the cave, the group proceeded to investigate the Big Slide, the cave's largest chamber. Following that, John, his brother Josh, and 2 other friends made the decision to attempt to locate the birth canal, a more difficult section they had heard of. The birth canal gets its name from its narrow squeeze that narrows down and opens up into a larger room, giving the impression that you are being birthed. John entered the birth canal head first, after discovering what he believed to be a hole in the wall. For a while, he felt his way along his stomach, but he couldn't see any signs of the tunnel continuing. Actually, as he crawled along, it narrowed. Now, it's unclear exactly where John was at this moment in the cave. While some accounts state he was in a tunnel next to the birth canal called Ed's Push, others believe he had entered the canal correctly, but had then unintentionally turned down another section known as Scout Eater. Either way, these tunnels are unexplored because they lead to nowhere big enough for a person. He eventually reached a steep drop in the tunnel that descended almost straight away. John crawled through the tiny tunnel, which was only 10 inches by 18 inches across, possibly believing that this was the drop he was searching for in the birth canal. John soon discovered that he had made a grave error because the tunnel never opened. He was now trapped upside down, as it narrowed even more. John's brother Josh was the first to discover him. Josh attempted to pull his brother out of the tunnel, but he was only able to move him a short distance before John slipped from his grasp and slid back into the crack. John slipped back in, getting wedged even deeper into the crack. This time, his hands were forced backward and one was pinned underneath him. Now the only things protruding from the crack were John's ankles and feet. Josh quickly raced out of the cave to get help after John, and he prayed briefly, realizing how serious the situation was. When Susie Matola, a woman, became the first rescuer to reach John at 12:30 a.m., he had been stuck for 3 hours, 400 feet, 122 meters, into the cave, and 100 feet, 30.5 meters, below the surface. John said, "Hi, Susie," in response to Susie introducing herself to him and pointing out his black running shoes as the only thing visible in the tunnel. "I appreciate you coming, but I just want to get out of here." Numerous rescuers arrived over the course of the next few hours and worked to free John from the cave. They talked about lubricating the cave's walls so he could slide out, as they came up with various ideas for how to free him. They ultimately settled on a set of climbing cams. The rescuers would then feed a rope through the cams and fasten it to John's legs. John would then be pulled up from the crevice by pulling on the other end of the rope. Along with attaching the cams, They started drilling holes through the rock to enlarge the tunnel. Regretfully, because the passages were so small, the drilling was sluggish, and it would take more than an hour to remove a few inches of rock. The location of John's body added to the complexity of the rescue. They couldn't just pull John straight up because the ceiling above where he was stuck was so low. He would need to be pulled up a little, then adjusted again, then pulled up some more and then adjusted again. After the initial attempt with just the climbing cams failed, the rescuers chose to feed the rope through pulleys that were fastened to the cave's walls. Once more, because of how narrow the cave was, this was an excruciatingly slow process. Despite the frantic efforts of nearly 100 rescuers, only one person could access John at a time from Nutty Putty Cave. Meanwhile, John was starting to get worse, 19 hours into the rescue. When we are standing, the human body is designed to pump blood into the brain, defying gravity. Blood builds up in the brain during an inverted position, making it difficult for the heart to pump blood out of the brain. In an effort to continuously pump blood out of the brain against gravity, this also puts a great deal of strain on the heart. The pressure on the heart and the accumulation of fluid in the brain eventually caused death. As time passed, John began to experience breathing difficulties and oscillated between feeling calm and terrified. It was also at this time that John and his wife were able to communicate with each other thanks to the introduction of a two-way radio into the cave. They did their best to console one another despite their shared concerns. The pulleys were finally fastened to the cave walls by the rescuers after they had completed drilling the holes. Then 8 men took hold of one end of the rope and started to drag John out of the crack. John's legs were hurting so much from being upside down that the team had to stop a lot to give him breaks. However, they did eventually succeed in raising him to a height where one of the rescuers could actually look him in the eye. The rescuers gave John one last rest before pulling him up again. Just as he was about to step out, the rope suddenly broke and the whole team collapsed. One of the pulleys broke free from the cave wall, knocking the nearest rescuer out cold. There was too much dust in the tunnel for him to see anything when he awoke. After the dust settled, he discovered that the pulley had broken free due to a large rock with rope wrapped around it. Simultaneously, he became aware that John had retreated into the crack. It felt like he was deeper this time than the last. The impact had also left the rescuer with serious facial injuries, so someone else had to step in to help. John was now fighting for his life, and the new rescuer saw that his breathing was much shallower and less frequent. After wearing himself out trying in vain to drill a new hole for the pulley, the new rescuer was replaced once more. When a second rescuer showed up, the first one attempted to speak with John but got no response. Soon after, a medical expert made his way into the cave where John was, and on November 25, 2009, at midnight, John was declared dead. It was determined that cardiac arrest was the official cause of death. During the rescue, a total of 137 rescuers worked continuously for 27 hours, but ultimately were unsuccessful in saving John Jones from the Nutty Putty Cave. The following day, authorities determined that retrieving the body would be too dangerous, and so cement was poured over the entrance, and John's body has remained there ever since. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe. See you next time. Stay alive.